All right, if you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. And this week, we've got a high five list of our favorite AEG games. I'm surprised, and that's for Alderac Entertainment Group, for those of you following at home. And I'm surprised we haven't done this one before, but there are a lot of games that we have recommended. And I think one of the things I want to highlight for non-gamers is that AEG has been around for a while as a publisher. But about 3 years ago, I think about 2019, they made a switch to focusing on less games a year. Yeah. Okay, so there's this idea of, throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks. And so they were kind of a publisher that just...
Not allowed in our house, by the way.
No, it totally isn't mine. It's art, Michael. So they were a company that was just pushing out games, and and some of them were very good, and some of them were completely forgotten about. And the idea of, okay, we're going to slow down and produce less games, but put more effort and hopefully have more quality. And I think they have succeeded in that mission, because the games that have come out since then,
unbelievable quality last
really
few years.
Good. There's not a lot of misses in there, and so I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about games that are on both of that have been recommended on both of our lists. There's going to be a good chunk there. So, without any further ado, Michael, what is your number 5?
Well, Doug, before I talk about number 5, let's look at a scholarly term. Are you aware of the term recency bias?
Yes, and that's interesting. Let's talk about that next week in our opening segment. How about that?
That's fine. So you don't want me to tell people what my number 5 game is? It's a game we just played last week. I thought about it throughout the week. It's well, look what I wrote in my run sheet here. Meeples and Monster. My autocorrect went to Maples and Monsters.
Very Canadian version. Hey, it's Maples and Monsters.
Meeples and Monsters, a game that just came out, 2022. Designer is Ole Steinus. 1 to 4 players, 45 to 60 minutes. Ages 14 plus on the box, and in the community, it's 8 plus, which tells you that there aren't a lot of reviewers on Board Game Geek, because the super gamers are like, I'm playing this with my 6-year-old, so I'm putting it down at 8. I think it's more towards the 10 to 12 plus.
Yep. It's probably just one of those choking hazard things we talk about.
Weight
is why it's 15 or 14 plus.
2.25, but you are pulling meeples out of a bag, and you are sending them on your little tavern area, and you as they prepare, and then you are sending them out to battle, and you're upgrading them along the way. I had a blast when we played this game last week following the podcast. I'm really hoping we play it again this evening. It's a game that I've been thinking about throughout the last week, so probably some recency bias here. A year from now, I don't know if it would be on my top 5, but today, real time in 2022, Meeples and Monsters was a hit for me.
There you go, Meeples and Monsters. That's a good one. Number 5 for me is the oldest game on my list, and this comes from that scattershot era of AEG, and that is Istanbul, published in 2014 by Rudiger Dorn. AEG is the publisher, obviously. Don't need to say that. 2 to 5 players and 40 to 60 minute. Istanbul is a game in which you have a leader and apprentices, and they're stacked discs, okay? And there's a whole marketplace. I think it's about 15 cards or 15 tiles. And you move to the tiles to take the action of that space. But as you go, you're dropping off assistants. And if you run out of assistants, you then need to keep and go back and pick them up. And it's a race to collect rubies from the marketplace. Whoever gets so many first wins the game. And it's a great little thinking puzzle of how you can efficiently use the action spaces on the board without extending yourself too thin.
I'm surprised it hasn't been a recommended game of the week yet. It just comes down to availability?
Have you played it?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I think it is an availability issue that kind of goes in and out and fluctuates. So, but as for now, it is still number 5 on my list, and that is Istanbul.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great game. We're going to have crossover, but there's going to be some good games left out. I do have one honorable mention I'll need to circle back to if you don't put it on your list. Number 4 for me, I play a ton of the app. I just haven't played a lot of it at home because I don't quite have the gamers to play it, but I have it at home, and that is 2016's Mystic Vale, designed by John D. Clare. 2 to 4 players, 45 minutes, ages 14 plus. The community says that it's 10 plus. The weight is 2.24 out of 5 for complexity. Little bit of a teach required with this one in Mystic Vale. You are selecting cards, and guess what? The cards actually have some transparency on them where there's an upper level, a middle level, and a bottom level. So you can stack these cards together to make super awesome cards. And putting the cards in your hand and playing them out of your hand to try to buy other cards that have point values on them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of the big kickers in this is that it's a push your luck style. As you're drawing, you make your cards better, but you're drawing cards out, and you're trying to draw as many as you can without spoiling, is what they call it. And then if you spoil, you basically skip your turn. And so you're constantly trying to make your cards better, and then have that really big turn. And sometimes it doesn't work out for you.
And I great game, could have been higher on my list, but just haven't played it in a while. Need to get that one back to the table. Actually packed it, though, today. We're going on a road trip this weekend, and I'm hoping to play it with my brother-in-law. So number 4 for me is Mystic Vale.
And a great app with that one, too. So, my number 4 is Calico. Published in 2020. The designer is Kevin Russ. 1 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes. This is an abstract kind of tile-laying game where you are building a quilt, essentially, and you are trying to meet objectives by the patterns and the colors that are on the quilt and where they are and whether they're next to each other or not next to each other. And if you make certain patterns, cats will come and lay down on your quilt. You can add buttons, which are points, and all that type of stuff. But this is a very crunchy puzzle. I haven't even dared to play it with Michael because of the color,
the colors,
the color issues. But this is one of those things where you start out the game and the world is your oyster, trying to fill in, and then as the game progresses, and that real estate that you have winnows down and gets tighter and tighter, and you're like, I need this exact swatch to come out. And that puzzle grind, I love, and that is Calico.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish I could say it's on my want to play list, but the colors, that's just one that I've shied away from. But cats and quilts, good stuff, Doug.
Allergic to both of them?
Yes, just cats.
No, I'm also allergic to quilts, any kind.
Oh, I love quilts. Number 3 for me, also by designer John D. Clare. This is 2018's Space Base, and that's 2 words: space, base.
Space.
And 2 to 5 players, 60 minutes. If I'm playing with 2 players, I can get through it in 45 minutes, even sometimes a half hour. Ages 14 plus, community 10 plus. The weight is 2.11 out of 5. This is just a fantastic game of where you are trying to buy ships. I think Doug might have a better description. You've probably played it a lot more than me. It is a game that's in my collection that I really enjoy. What am I leaving out here,
Doug?
It's
very much like a Machikoro style game where you roll dice, which then activate ships. But as you upgrade your ships are all associated with a number. And so
there it is.
You can upgrade those ships, and when they do, they get kind of a passive ability. So while they're in front of you, they activate on your turn. When they're in their passive ability, they activate on everybody else's turn. And when somebody rolls the 2 dice, you can choose to either use them collectively at the sum of those dice or individually. So I could activate my 2 and my 4 ship, or I could just activate my 6 ship. And so it's a really good game. It's not on my list. I think I appreciate the simplicity of a Machikoro more, and so that's why it's not on my list. I feel like there adds a couple of elements that I think add to the complexity.
Yeah, I love the gameplay of it. Yeah. I really enjoy playing Space Base, and that's why it is on my list at number 3.
Very good game. My number 3, we talked about in episode number 6. This is Point Salad, published in 2019, designed by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankovich. 2 to 6 players, 15 to 30 minutes. Great game in which you are drafting vegetable cards, and you are either using the vegetable side of the card to add to your vegetable collection, or you're using the reverse side, which is a scoring mechanism for the vegetables that are in your collection.
And Doug, can you confirm this is the only time that you have vegetables in your hand is when you're playing point salad? Is that accurate?
Yes, I need to pull out a diagram to understand what the things on the cards were.
What the vegetables are. No, Doug, that's an eggplant.
What's a vegetable? Me and they don't get along with me.
Oh, go ahead. Why is this such a great game, and why do we review it in episode 6?
It's a simple teach, a simple gameplay, fast. That 30 minutes is a stretch if you'd ever get to 30 minutes.
Again, fun. And the art is clean. It's crisp. A nice little set collection aspect in there. That's a good one.
So simple.
Great. Number 2 for me, and I promise this is the last time John D. Clare shows up on my list. John D. Clare is only 60% of my list here. This is the 2019 Ecos. Ecos is 2 to 6 players, 45 to 75 minutes, and it is all of that. Ages 14 plus, community says 12 plus. The weight is 2.6 out of 5. It's the most complex game on my list. As a reminder, 1 to 5 is the complexity or the weight rating. 1 is going to be like patty cake or bingo. 5, your brain is going to melt. So a 2.6, you'll need to read the rules and take a little bit of time to understand the game. Where this one, the complexity is, there's a few different things going on. So you are pulling great little wood tiles out of a bag, right? Until a certain tile comes out that is the harbinger. Then you're going to pass that bag to the next person, and they will start to pull tiles out of the bag. And you are trying to build an ecosystem with animals, and it's a ton of fun. It's a game that I really enjoy playing. I enjoy playing with my oldest child. Josie is fantastic at it. It's one that's brought us a lot of joy. Unfortunately, it might actually get replaced in our collection because of a game that's on our honorable mention. If it were up to me, I'd always have Ecos, but we have another game that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes that has some similarities to it.
Well, and the big function of Ecos is it's a bingo. It's kind of a bingo mechanism in which you are drawing those tiles out of the bag, and then everybody's placing on their own cards in front of them to activate abilities. So it's got a little bit of we talked about Rise of Augustus last week. It takes that concept and ratchets it up a little bit more with the complexity.
Yeah, but it also has a dial that gets turned that I just really enjoy playing that game with how all the different facets work together. I think it's a fantastic and very underrated game myself, and I'll circle back to it in just a moment.
All right. Well, my number 2 is, I'm assuming, the game that you're talking about that may be a Ecos killer, and that is Cascadia. We talked about this one in episode 54 of our podcast, published in 2021. The designer is Randy Flynn. 1 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes. Just a great little tile drafting game in which you are building an ecosystem in the Pacific Northwest to attract salmon, deer, bears, eagles, foxes. Who am I missing?
You got them.
All right. And so you are scoring points by how they are arranged, how those tiles are arranged, and how the animals are positioned. So you're trying to create large habitats of forests and river and stuff like that, have those connected, but also have the animals in specific shapes to earn points. And this is kind of the spiritual successor to Calico. Same design studio, Flat Out Games.
Flat Out Games, yep.
So they started with Calico, and then Cascadia was their next one that came out, and a lot of commonalities between it. And some people like one over the other, and clearly I like Cascadia over Calico because it's higher on my list.
And Doug, when you're right, you are right. I have Cascadia as an honorable mention because this is my list. So these are the 5 games that I like to play. But in my household, Cascadia is loved. My family really enjoys playing that game, and we seem to get that one to the table a lot more than Ecos, simply because I think it's simpler.
Yeah.
And the time, it's shorter. Ecos is a Saturday afternoon game, or hey, it's 7:00. This is our game we're going to play for the next 2 hours because of the setup and takedown. All that being said, these are fantastic games, and we are splitting hairs over really good games. So.
Yep. All right, what do you got number one, Michael?
Number one's Point Salad. You addressed all of it. The only thing that I'll add, that game truly does get done in 15 minutes. That is also a party game. We have neighbors who they'll play games, but this is one where one of my friends doesn't really like a whole lot of complexity, and Point Salad, you can pick it right up. So if you grew up playing euchre or sheep's head or Shanghai rummy or any of those things, a little bit of Point Salad will get thrown right in there and be a delicious game. So.
Yeah, and certainly with adults, it is, you bring up that point of euchre and stuff like that. When you're playing this game with adults, it's certainly one that you can have side conversations and be having a whole conversation.
Have a game on in the background,
while
have
the
kids coming
game
over,
is
cutting up
going on.
dessert.
Yep.
Play it 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds. Take it with you. If it fits in a purse or just fits in, I keep it in the top of my backpack. Grab it out of the quiver. I love Point Salad. I really do. It's a game that you introduced me to, as I think most of these games are. But that's my number one. What do you have at number one, Doug?
My number one is from episode 13, and that is Tiny Towns 2019. Peter McPherson is the designer, 1 to 6 players, 45 to 60 minutes. This is one of those that fits similar to Calico, that thing that I love, which is that limited space as you go along. That puzzle gets tighter and tighter and crunchier, and how you're going to make things fit. The way that this game works is as people call out, you take turns calling out a material, and you have to add that material, that cube, represented by a cube, and you need to add that to your player board, which is a grid of a town. And once you get a certain combination of materials, you can build a building.
Build that structure, and it replaces
and that structure
cubes.
goes in one of the spots that your cubes were in. And so as you keep adding buildings, your space to put materials is limited, and that struggle is just great. There's a huge amount of variety in the game. Simple to learn. You can take away some of the pressure by playing with the town crier mode, where the materials are determined by randomized. Yep. So just a lot of great things going on in this one. No surprise. We talked about it in episode 13. I'm assuming this is a color issue for you, that maybe this was not on the list?
No, I just, for my list, those are my 5 games. It's tough.
Yeah.
AEG, I had 12 games in my own collection that I'm sorting through that I thought could be in the top 5. And at the end of the day, and I shuffled my list a little bit, this is my list of top 5 games.
Yeah.
Now, on my wife's list, which we just did a few weeks ago, Tiny Towns was right up there as one of her favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
And this is also going in the van this weekend on the road trip.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic game. I love that game. I'll play it any day of the week. It just didn't make my top 5.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great games. You mentioned Mystic Vale, which didn't make my list. There was, thought about Batman Love Letter, which sounds funny, but it's just another great, simple game.
Well, any of the Love Letter, right?
The original Love Letter, AEG was the first to publish it. They no longer are the publisher of that, but so they've got a lot of great games, and certainly a lot of things that you mentioned Meeples and Monsters. I'm excited about. We just got Dead Reckoning from John D.
I
Clare.
know. I almost played that on solo just to get ready for this list, but I didn't think that would be authentic. And if you wonder why we're looking over here, it's because that's where Doug has his AEG titles on the shelf for those of you who are watching us on YouTube. I really like the games that they've been putting out. I like the complexity and the weight and just the accessibility as well. These are the games that we've talked about range from, hey, I'm going to play this with my kids and with friends who don't really play a whole lot of games, to this is a game night game like Meeples and Monsters was. So
that is our high 5 AEG games. And that's going to do it for us this week. I just want to remind everybody to subscribe to us on whatever listening device you use for your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever Google does, your Pocket Cast all those type of things. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook at GameSchoolerU is our handle. Again, check out our website. We've got all our recommended games. This video will be posted there, and a whole bunch of other educational materials that you might want to take a look at. We've got that. That's gameschooler.com. If you got questions, email us at email@gameschooler.com.
Now get out there and keep game schooling.